What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and today I wanted to do an advanced player's guide video. There are a ton of videos out there for how to get started with D&D 5th edition as a player, but there's not a ton about what to do at that next level. After you've gotten a campaign under your belt, you've been playing for a couple of years, maybe you DM'd a little bit, and you want to take everything up a notch in terms of how you interact with the table and the story as a player. Now, an important disclaimer to kick this video up: I'm not going to go into mechanical exploits and how to game the system as a player. That's not the type of player that I am. That's not the type of tables that I run as a DM. So that's not what I'm going to be getting into in this video. I'm going to be focusing much more on how you can be a very giving player from a narrative storytelling standpoint as a player, how you can interact with the campaign that your GM and your fellow players are creating in a meaningful and impactful way once you've been playing for a little bit of time. So let's kick things off with the most basic one: creating three-dimensional characters, the heart and soul of a good tabletop role-playing game. The kind of characters that you can look at and genuinely think, if I met this person in real life, would I love them or would I hate them? So let's break it down step by step. First off, obviously, is the backstory. Nobody really wakes up and thinks, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to abandon everybody that I know and love and go become an adventurer. Typically, there's a pretty strong motivation for why you eschew the comforts of civilization to go out and put yourself in dangerous situations over and over again for the promise of a little bit of coin. So while yes, you might have previously come up with a backstory that incorporates why your character left home. They were shunned by their village. They were witness to the death of their family. All kinds of things, all very good tropey things, or you could subvert things by having a loving and welcoming family back home waiting for you while you just go out and have fun putting your life in danger constantly and making them worried sick about whether or not they're going to ever see you again. People make fun of players for not leaving family behind. I think that's a mercy. But what I'm getting at is, why is your character an adventurer? A lot of people in your campaign's world lost their parents. A lot of people got kicked out of their home or out of their village, and they're not adventurers. They moved to the next town over. They went to the big city to work as a member of the waitstaff in a tavern. Why did your character decide that the next best action they could take is adventuring? Are they on a vengeance quest to hunt down the people responsible for the death of their family? Is your rogue on a vengeance quest against a werewolf mafia that destroyed their family's bakery? Or maybe your cleric has taken a vow of silence only to be broken once they have achieved a level of enlightenment that their god demands of them. It'd be a difficult character to play at a table, but I've seen people that can make it work. But the weirder and more specific, the better. Trust me. When crafting a backstory, I always try to think, why does my character live on the road? Why are they on the run? Why have they chosen this life? Because that's an important fundamental question to creating a three-dimensional character. So instead of simply saying, my bard loves music, why do they love music? Did they grow up in a family of traveling musicians? Did they stumble upon a artifact loot that can summon celestial kittens? The more unique and personal your character's backstory is, the more motivated you are going to be in the following steps to drive that character's story forward and engage with the story that the rest of the table is creating around you. Next up, explore your character's internal conflicts and flaws that will shape who they are as a person, adding that true third dimension. Not everybody is perfect. Is your lawful good paladin struggling with kleptomania? Is your elven ranger terrified of squirrels and their beady little eyes? What aspect of your character goes against the archetypical type of character that they are? These inner struggles not only make your character more relatable and lovable, it also creates some really fun role-playing moments when the time comes for you to reveal that to the rest of the party, and when it creates an interesting complication down the road further in the campaign. Next up, you're going to want to think about how your character's personal goals and motivations intersect with the campaign's story. This will take a little bit of time talking with your DM about what they're thinking for the campaign moving forward as you are creating your character before the start of the campaign, but it can yield some really great dividends for you in terms of allowing your character's goals to already be a part of the Dungeon Master's plan. Not in a way that your character is like the chosen one and vital to the DM story, but if you ask the Dungeon Master, hey, Family's gonna get killed in the backstory, so I'm an adventurer. What type of enemies are you thinking to feature in this campaign? Because I would love to have a faction of those enemies be responsible for my family's death so that my character is extra invested in this campaign. And you can also invert it to a certain extent. Is your character seeking redemption for accidentally unleashing a zombie horde on their hometown? And the DM is going to feature undead, and a necromancer is the big bad. And so rather than your character immediately being in direct conflict, the big bad kind of likes your character. At least a bunch of zombies. That's cool. And that can create an interesting role-playing moment between your character and the big bad evil entity of the campaign. Additionally, maybe it's something more mundane. Maybe your character, their mom made the best cheese. She was known as the best cheesemonger in all of the nations. And she tragically passed away, and your character is seeking somebody, anybody, who can make cheese as delicious as your mom's. That's why they travel the world. They're on a hunt for really good cheese. I've seen weirder backstories. But let your dungeon master know, because perhaps there's an element that they can cause an intersection in the campaign to where it makes sense for your character to fulfill that personal goal. And then you can get into the inner party dynamics. Perhaps your warlock with the arch-fey patron is going to have some real problems when the time comes in the campaign where the party needs to help destroy an enchanted forest because horrifying creatures are coming out of it and killing the townspeople. Your patron refuses to let you use your power for that end. What are you going to do? These conflicts can create wonderful moments of tension and drive character development. And lastly, look at your character sheet. Look at what you have written down for your flaws, bonds, traits, those things on your character sheet, and use them to engage in role-playing moments. If your character has a fear of commitment, that's something that you put there, how are they going to respond when the party gets the offer to join a guild or take up a long-term quest that's going to require them to travel months, if not years, down the road? Is your player character, who has a fear of commitment, going to really just sign up and be like, yeah, sure, sign me up. I'm more than willing to sign away a year of my life? Maybe not. This isn't to say create a character that is unwilling to participate in the campaign. You should always seek to participate in the campaign, but allow these things to drive your role-playing as your character goes on the journey to become somebody who isn't as afraid of commitment as they were the day before. And they'll get better the day after, and the day after. And that takes us right into our next section. We have created complex and fascinating characters, and now it's time to figure out how we make them better through personal growth. After all, nobody wants to watch a movie where the main character stays the same from beginning to end. Except for the Fast and Furious movies. Those are fun. First and foremost, take a moment to reflect on your character's experiences and what's happened previously in the campaign, or even their backstory. But now we're moving out of the backstory phase and kind of into the campaign proper. Think about the experiences that your character has been going through and how that affects their current state of being and their mindset and their confidence and their development. Perhaps when the bard attempted to flirt with the dragon to get out of the sticky situation they were in and it went horribly wrong, maybe next time the bard tries to flirt with somebody in a tavern, their confidence is shaken. They don't really have it in them. They don't believe that they are as charming as they once did, despite the fact that their charisma score is still obnoxiously high. There's actually a real-world example of this that I want to go over, because with D&D, the dice rolls introduce a level of randomness into the proceedings to where you're not always in control of what your player character is able to accomplish. So oftentimes, random fate will create an opportunity for storytelling. I'm going to put a clip right here. This is a professional wrestling match. I love pro wrestling. I've talked about it on the channel before. AJ Styles, who is an extremely good pro wrestler, during a match tried to do one of his finishers, the phenomenal forearm. And he fell. He messed up the move. He fell off the ropes. It was a genuine botch. He did not intend to do that. But what he did for the rest of the match is he turned it into a story. He continued to attempt the phenomenal forearm over and over again, messing it up every time, until at the end of the match he finally hit it to a huge ovation from the crowd. This was not predetermined. This was not something that was planned before the match happened. A bad roll occurred, he messed up his attack, and he turned it into a story. That's what you should do. Now the next one is similar but uniquely different in that you should find opportunities for your character to change and grow based on the story and the circumstances that the dungeon master is putting in front of you. Maybe your once carefree, easygoing rogue is all of a sudden a lot more cautious and paranoid after that run-in with the law where they almost got caught. Or maybe your calculating, cold-hearted sorcerer, after the party saved that village and they saw the family's relief at being united and the fear washing away from them because of what your party did, maybe that heart starts to thaw a little bit and they open up more to their fellow party members and are willing to take a little bit less gold on the next job. And then the next dynamic for character growth: how does your interactions with your fellow party members change your character? Iron sharpens iron, after all. One of my favorite fun facts that I like to bring up to people is the old adage, blood is thicker than water, actually means the opposite of what people use it for. The full quote, abbreviated, it's originally Arabic, but rough translation is, the blood of battle is thicker than water of the womb. It actually means the people that you spill blood with, the people you fight alongside, those bonds are much stronger than merely sharing DNA. So maybe that dwarf fighter that the other player is controlling that was a real jerk at the start of the campaign, maybe you start to warm up to them after your third or fourth time fighting side by side and them saving your life due to their huge shield being able to stop an incoming attack. Maybe the dwarf starts to become more trustful of the wild magic sorcerer in spite of their erratic magic after the sorcerer has cast shield, after the sorcerer has taken out an enemy about to stab them in the... And these can also create new storylines and opportunities for growth that your GM can pounce on. Maybe the druid and the ranger, who previously were a little bit competitive because they had slightly different viewpoints on the role of nature and civilization and how they should interact, maybe they start growing closer together and they discover that they have a shared love of a certain type of animal. And now all of a sudden that type of animal is in danger. And so those two player characters are going to leap to go save them. Whereas before, the GM never would have thought to introduce that storyline because it wasn't important. But now it's a bonding opportunity for two player characters that you, as the player of the druid, helped create. And lastly, collaborate with your GM in order to figure out how your character's personal growth can be reflected in the beats of the campaign. This will really make your character feel like they belong in this story. You're not putting yourself front and center, you're not stealing the spotlight, but you're incorporating your character's growth and those beats alongside the beats of the campaign. Maybe your cleric, who was originally a skeptic, maybe they were chosen by a god to be the cleric that does their bidding on earth, and your cleric wanted nothing to do with that. But over time, your cleric becomes a devout follower after seeing miracles or utilizing the power of their god to save people or amplify the domain of their god in their world. Their skepticism washes away and they become a true devout follower. And then, because you've worked with your GM, that rug gets pulled out from under you. Something devastating happens that causes all that skepticism to wash back in. And your cleric has to decide, do I actually believe this? Do I want to be a part of this? Or should I walk away? It's good storytelling. We've got our multi-dimensional characters, and now they're growing, changing, they're becoming new people. What's the next secret ingredient? Creating an immersive world through relationships with non-player characters and fellow party members. So the GM is obviously largely in charge of the world building, unless you're doing a fun mechanic in your campaign where the players contribute to that as well. But generally speaking, making the world feel immersive a lot of times gets pushed to the GM. That's your job. But you as a player can absolutely help in very small little ways. First things first, forge deep, meaningful connections with non-player characters. This will do so much to make the game world seem real. The grumpy herbalist in town is not a potion vendor. They are a person with dreams and hopes and goals and tragedy. And if you ask them about that, if you engage with them while you're going to buy potions, you're still getting your healing potions. Don't worry. But while they're getting them off the shelf, you ask about the two empty chairs at the table that you see behind the counter. I only ever see you in here. Who are the other two chairs for? Probably going to have a sad story. But these connections make your characters and the world and the non-player characters feel alive and feel real. And you never know what is going to come out of this. you might develop a strong, potentially romantic relationship with an NPC that can inform your player character's story. Maybe they never thought that they would find love again after their husband was killed in the war, and that's why they're an adventurer. Maybe they just never wanted that to begin with, but this person's here, and we have a lot in common, and now I'm uncomfortable. Or you can find a intense rivalry with the blacksmith in town, and really just there's something about them, their personality, that drives you up the wall, and you're just giving the GM more tools, but also making the world seem more real for you and your character. And who knows, maybe something terrible happens and your player character dies during the campaign. Wouldn't it be so much easier to create a new character that can jump right into the campaign if you have a whole menagerie of fully realized, alive feeling non-player characters already in the campaign? Also, this will help out so much. A lot of times in campaigns, especially longer campaigns, you'll have that one quest that it just feels like, you know what, I don't know why we're doing this. But if you treat the world as real, if your character engages with all parts of the world, then it's that much easier to actually care about the quest. Because while maybe you as a player know it's a bad idea, you as a player knows that this is something being manufactured by a villain. As a player, a lot of things. But your player character doesn't care, because this world is real to them. And if they don't do this, something bad may happen. So while they might know it's a trap, they might know it's a bad idea, they don't care. Because the herbalist is in trouble. And they've already lost so much. So we have to help them. Now, on the flip side, relationship with your fellow player characters can really solidify the world. There's an adage, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. And your fellow party members, even if you're not blood related in fiction, they're like your family in that you don't get to choose your fellow party members. Your fellow players created them, and you all have agreed to play this game together. And so you're stuck together. So take time to explore those dynamics and those relationships with the knowledge that two of you just can't walk away from each other. You have to be in each other's lives. You are stuck together. So fight to find the reason why you stick together. Perhaps your stoic paladin clashes with the party's more chaotic and carefree sorcerer. But after a particular harrowing battle where the sorcerer's adaptability and improvising skills saved the party, you begin to understand why your differences can be a good thing. Why being the way that they are, in spite of the fact that it annoys you a lot, is a valuable asset. These dynamics can give a campaign just so much more life and breath to it. And players that are willing to engage in this are worth their weight in gold. And you can start small. You don't need to wait for some big revelatory moment. Ask the other PCs about their backstory. Ask about their home. Ask about, did you leave anybody behind? Just engage with their backstory. And this is a big thing that a lot of campaigns struggle to do. I hear a lot of complaints, and D&D has released a lot of materials to try and combat this with what to be done with downtime. And Pathfinder 2nd Edition does a much better job in providing tools for like mechanical things to do with downtime. But I think the best use of your downtime is to talk to people, like the other player characters or the NPCs. Roleplay. If your GM knows that downtime means role-playing, you're going to give them a little bit of a break from all the like planning encounters and stuff like that. Sure, they'll have to roleplay if you're engaging with the bartender at the tavern, but that's a lot different than planning an encounter or having to worry about the party going off into some other section of the world. So during a quiet night in town where the party has just gotten done with the job and it's, you know what, let's take a couple days. Let's recoup. We got some magic items we need to get identified, etc., etc. Rather than just cutting to the next couple days before you head on the next job, roleplay that night in town, that first night. Maybe the bard sits at the bar alone. Nobody else wanted to go out drinking that night and discovers that the bartender was once a legendary hero. And they've got some good wisdom for him about what it means to be an adventurer and when it's time to hang up the boots and call it a day. Additionally, embrace character-driven side quests and personal story arcs, even if they're not your own. You're growing close to your fellow party members, you're growing close to these NPCs, you should give a crap about what happens to them. Your bard may cheekily ask the bartender who was once a legendary hero, where's your weapon? Don't big-time heroes who open up a bar normally hang their sword or axe or whatever behind the bar, and the bartender can nod somberly and say, I'd love to, but I lost it. Last job, had to leave it behind as I rushed out, carrying one of my fellow party members. I wish I could have it back, wish I could hang it up, but not in the cards. A beginner player will hear that story and go, oh, that's so cool that they were an adventurer. It sucks that their sword isn't here. Another drink, please. An advanced player will go, where'd you lose it? How long ago? Can you point out on this map where it was? We have a job in that area coming up. We can more than happily divert a route and just take a look. Now you have another side quest. And when you bring that legendary sword back to that bartender, you have an ally for life. And that's an interesting and compelling story to tell. Okay, the world's built around us. We have our three-dimensional character. They are growing over the course of the campaign. Now, we need to figure out how to master in-character decision-making and problem-solving. Beginner players, and a lot of even very experienced players, will oftentimes revert to how they solve problems and how their character solves problems. If you have a very intelligent player that is very good at puzzles and their character, their 8 intelligence barbarian sees the puzzle, the player is going to immediately launch into solving that puzzle because that's who they are as a player. But as you become more advanced as a player, I think it's a really good sign that somebody's growing when they start taking their character's background, motivations, goals, inadequacies into account when they approach a problem. If the party encounters a door without any handles that's locked, the sorcerer, player controlling the sorcerer, might immediately start searching for arcane runes, whereas the resourceful ranger, who's good at tracking and survivability, might start walking the perimeter, finding another way to enter the building. Your noble paladin isn't going to resort to stealing from somebody in order to take a shortcut, whereas your rogue certainly isn't going to agree to a fair and noble duel. Embracing your character's unique perspective on the world and how they solve problems and make decisions will once again reinforce who your character is as you're playing. Also, be sure to use your character's unique perspective on the world and their skills to think outside the box when you're trying to solve problems. Get really creative. If you all need to cross a bridge and there's some guards standing at the bridge just talking, they're not like super intense, but they're there. You need to deal with them. Instead of trying to sneak around them or fight them or something, maybe your bard starts, the rest of the party is hidden, walking down the street. Maybe your bard notices that one of the guards' bags has the patch of a local band on it. And your bard tells the rest of the party to hide, and as they're walking by, they play one of the songs by that band, naturally drawing the attention of that guard. You're like, oh, you're a fan too? And they engage in a conversation. The bard learns that the guards actually all play instruments. They are all musically inclined. And the bard convinces them, why are you guards? You should be making music. You should start a band. And by the end of the conversation, the guards take off, excited about the new band that they're about to start, as the bard smiles at the rest of the party and goes, let's go. The best stories come from unexpected and off-the-wall situations. So be sure to use the world around you and its lore to inform and engage in your decision-making and problem-solving. The more familiar you are with the setting that you're playing in, obviously, the better this is going to be, but maybe you are a cleric of the sun god and you know that a solar eclipse is coming up where your powers are going to be diminished, but that means that you're going to be less traceable by the big bad who can track sources of magic in people. And so you pick that time as the time for your cleric to sneak in to their hideout because they will be virtually undetectable. And this last point, and I cannot oversell what a difference this makes in making your party seem cohesive and making the world and your characters seem real. Collaborate and plan in character. If you and your players, rather than taking a step back and going, okay, how are we going to deal with this problem, and completely breaking character and talking strategically at a 30,000-foot view, stay in character. Problem solve within the confines of the world. You can still talk about your resources as a spellcaster or as a fighter or whatever. Just use language that makes sense in the world. I know spell slots can get a little finicky when you're trying to figure out how to communicate those things. Even if you're saying in character, listen, these 3 spells that are my powerhouse spells, I can do them twice and then I am wiped out. Magic sapped out. I can do some of my little piddly stuff, but these 3 spells we need, I can do 2 of them one time or 1 of them twice, and then that's it. I'm tapped. That's an easy way to communicate, hey, I only got 2 5th level spell slots, so if we're going to need greater restoration, we got a limited timetable on. Okay, so now you are allowing your character's real world being inform your problem solving and decision making. Let's talk about probably the most overlooked thing that an advanced player can use to make their character really sing in the confines of a campaign. And we touched on it earlier. Embrace the narrative impact of failure and its consequences. I love tabletop role-playing games where your character gains experience by failing checks. I love that idea because, as Yoda said, failure, the greatest teacher is, I forget the words, but yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the idea of success and victory and your player characters being awesome heroes. But you got to get there. You should be awesome heroes in the final battle. That should be the only time that you are hoping for unequivocal, slam dunk successes. The rest of the time, embrace the low rolls, embrace the failure. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking stuff. Your really stealthy rogue botches a critical stealth roll, getting spotted and having to retreat. Rather than it being some like fundamental world-shattering thing for them, maybe you just describe the next scene with them during downtime as them going out and buying darker clothes. And that's just a little nod to how they are learning from their failures and be like, you know what? Need to be a bit more stealthy. Explore how these setbacks, consequences, and failures shape your character and their worldview. It's just like real life. The things that we come up against that we're unable to overcome, the things that knock us down, more often than not, are the most important parts of our lives. They're the parts that really inform who we are and what we could be. After losing a hard-fought battle that your party members and you were only engaged in because you were getting paid really good money to go try to take down this roving band of bandits, and the rolls just went bad that session. That encounter did not go your way, and your party had to retreat. Maybe that failure caused them to look back and realize, wait, there were, like, people. There was a village there that, because we were too worried about our own skin and the money that we were getting paid, and we weren't getting paid enough to do this, those people might have died. Are we just mercenaries? Is that all we care about? That could be a great growing moment for not just your character, but the party as a whole. And now my favorite thing to do, talk with your game master about creating long-term, if not permanent, consequences for your character as a result of their failings. Whether it's dealing with the fallout of a botched negotiation or a morally dubious deal that your player character has made, those things should have a lasting impact, and they should be reflected in the story that's being told at the table. So informing your game master, like, hey, your player character did this and feel like it was really bad, and I would like that to come back to bite them in the butt. Work with your game master to explore how these choices can affect your character and the world around them, and potentially the other party members. It's important for this to be a conversation between you and the table so that you're not putting undue hardship on your fellow players without them really signing up for it. That can create a certain level of resentment if you're constantly making life harder for the fellow party members. So working with your game master to make sure that those consequences are focused on your player character and doesn't really trickle out to the rest of the party can be a really good step to take. Finally, and I know I wasn't going to get too heavy into mechanics, but this one bears discussing, allow the narrative impact of failures to blend into the mechanics. Maybe you as the party's fighter you had the fighting style of duelist, like you wanted to fight people one-on-one and have amazing duels. But because you were so focused on that, a fellow party member went down. Maybe they died even. And so you switch, with your GM's permission, your fighting style to defense, or you switch your fighting style to something that's more protective, something that allows you to help others and keep them out of harm's way, as opposed to focusing solely on your own glory. So there you have it, the advanced player's guide for being a good player at the table and engaging with the story that your table is presenting you and contributing to that story in a meaningful way, helping to make the game world feel real through three-dimensional characters, embracing growth and change, building immersive relationships, mastering in-character decision-making, and finding the narrative fun in your most devastating failures. This will take your D&D storytelling to new heights. Remember, the key to an unforgettable campaign is capturing the magic of a narrative in a world that feels real with characters who feel real. So get creative, go wild, and have fun. And if you're a game master watching this and you want some tips on how to engage with players that are doing this kind of behavior, check out the video right there.